I have, over the years, taken you to huge, elaborate castles and forts. But truly, what makes a fort great, in the true sense of the word, is the men manning it. The designs and construction may be amazing in themselves, but as we have seen in history, the stronger forts may fall without a shot fired, while the smallest may hold out until the last round have been expended. I'm going to take you to the first Maginot Line fort that fell to the German army in 1940. But what you will remember here is not the battle or the tactical miscalculations, but the soldiers here. And for this reason, both the Germans and the French left it intact for all to see after the battle and after the war. So today it looks just like in 1940. This was to be a small fort of the line, with only 2 combat blocks, despite its exposed flanking position, with few supporting field positions. It cost just around 14 million francs to build, and construction ended in 1939. And there was no links to the 2 blockhouses outside. The fort is located to the west of the main Maginot Line, to defend against a German advance through Belgium. These new forts were lacking the funding of the initial Maginot Line forts. Thus, the placings were wider apart, and some lacked the mutual supporting fire ability that saved so many of the others. La Ferte had a number of design and construction problems. Block 2 required a great deal of rubble to fill to cover the sides of the block. This rubble had not yet stabilized by 1940 and was easily dislodged by the artillery fire the Germans exposed the fight to. This is why the whole field around the fort resembles more a World War I battlefield than that of World War II. Also, Block 2 had restricted fields of fire, and even the nearby road had dead zones that could not be placed under fire. Also, the artillery blocks were not suited for extended living, as you'll see, and it lacked some close protection. Both fighting positions had a substructure which was linked by a deep 275-meter-long underground gallery. And what was worse, the main drain in La Ferte was not configured as an emergency exit, as we have seen before in other forts. The fort was under command of Lieutenant Maginot with 97 men and 3 officers. The lieutenant had taken command on March 20, 1940. His second in command was Lieutenant Tourmont, who had previously been posted with a machine gun battalion, but he lacked the special training on the Maginot systems, and La Ferte was understaffed with officers as well. In 1940, the western portion of the Malmedy sector was lightly defended, ranging from several lines of fortifications to fortified houses near the border and small blockhouses further back. None of the western defenses were sufficient to support the La Ferte. On May 13-14, German forces crossed the Meuse near Sedan. They broke the French 55th Infantry Division, driving them out of the blockhouse line and allowing the Germans to gain a strong position, from which they would exploit their breakthrough. A collapse of the French 2nd and 9th Armies allowed the German forces to move west of La Ferte, cutting off the fort from support. The German 71st Infantry Division approached La Ferte. The Germans referred to it as Panzerwerk 505, and they occupied the surrounding area, out of range of fire from the Ouvrage. The 71st ID had trained specifically for an assault on Maginot Line forts and were provided with the shaped charge explosives of the same type used in the assault of the Belgian fort Epinal, as we've seen before. On the 16th of May, the Germans took nearby hill 226, which overlooked La Ferte, and from the west they attacked the hill higher up 311, overlooking La Ferte from the southwest, despite here being under fire from one of the casemates, the Villiquest. That evening, German reconnaissance drew supporting fire from the Ouvrage la Ferte 75mm guns. This fort, in support, fired 1,200 rounds in 7 hours. On May 17, German artillery began bombardment of La Ferte with 21cm mortars and 88mm velocity anti-tank cannons. By midday of the 17th, La Ferte telephone communications were cut, forcing the position to communicate by radio, which could be monitored by the Germans, and which required Bourguignon to transmit through the Ouvrage la Ferte to reach the headquarters. During the afternoon of the 17th, the Ville artillery casemate was evacuated, while the German bombardment continued. But the French did fire back from Ouvrage la Ferte. At this time, General Hunziker ordered the Ville and La Ferte to be relieved by General Bochat, responsible for the area. He decided to counterattack from the south through Hill 311 towards La Ferte. Telephone service was restored on the morning of the 18th May, allowing better artillery coordination in support of La Ferte. But by the afternoon, the Germans had occupied the village of La Ville, completing the encirclement of the Ouvrage. Block 2's automatic rifles observation cloche was hit by German fire, killing 3 soldiers inside. The retractable mixed-arm turret on Block 2 became stuck in the open position, facing to the rear and unable to aim. Germans now entered the 2 vacant casemates. 3 batteries of German 210mm howitzers fired on La Ferte, with supporting fire on the fort's surroundings from 155mm howitzers. 4 German 88 guns opened fire on the exposed positions of the main Ouvrage. This cratered the ground significantly, and German sappers went in to destroy the previously damaged cloche and threw bombs into the voids. Then they destroyed the stuck turret and 2 more cloches, leaving Block 2 incapable of further resistance. Supporting fire from Cesnois was hampered by the smoke shells that obscured the French observation post's view. The French counterattack was ordered from the French line, using 10 Char B tanks supported by 2 battalions of infantry. However, losing half its tanks, the attack stalled. Fort Cesnois was ordered to cease supporting fire for fear of hitting the French rescue force. This allowed the Germans to move freely about the surface. Block's 2 mixed arms turret was blown up into the air, so it landed askew on its opening where we see it today. At 2300 hours, the ground assault on Block 1 was launched. 2 hours later, all of Block 1's cloches was out of action. Despite this, Fort Cesnois was still directly ordered not to fire on La Ferte, despite continuing reports from observers that the Germans were on top of the position. Lieutenant Bourguignon repeatedly asked General Aimé for permission to abandon his position. Aimé refused to grant it, saying, "Your mission has not changed." The commander of Cesnois, Bourguignon's former commander, who pleaded for the divisional staff to allow the lieutenant to evacuate, advised him that a Maginot Line ouvrage is like a submarine. One does not leave a submarine, one sinks with it. Contact was lost with La Ferte overnight. By the morning of the 19th, resistance ceased. There was no response to repeated telephone calls from the French headquarters. It became apparent that the interior of Block 2 was on fire. On the 20th, equipped with respirators, the Germans entered Block 2, encountering no one. The next day, they were able to enter Block 1, also finding no resistance. Then the Germans moved on to other objectives. On June 2nd, a German patrol made a full survey of the ouvrage, finding, quote, the most difficult conditions imaginable, and discovering the corpses of the entire garrison in the underground gallery. All had suffocated. Most were still wearing gas masks. By 9 June, the area was firmly under German control. The bodies of the garrison was recovered by a German penal battalion and buried nearby.
Well, here we are at the petit ouvrage, of the small ouvrage of Ouvrage la Ferte. Unfortunately for this ouvrage, it's reasonably well built, but it was the last of a line of ouvrage, of the Maginot line. The next ouvrage, which would have supported this small work over on the hills further to the west, was never built. So this one was left in a slightly exposed position because the only other fort which could fire on it, Le Chenois, was such a long way away and only had a World War I twin 75 turret, in which the guns could reach the top of this fort but didn't have the range to fire beyond it. So when the Germans approached it, they could do so, well, unseen and without being fired on.
There's something appropriate about visiting this place in a day where it's stormy and gray and rainy, knowing what took place inside.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see out here in the field with the little spikes. You trip over the barbed wire and you're impaled on these. When you go looking at Maginot forts in the forest where nature's grown up, you don't see these, and then you trip and then you have a very bad day. Perfect defensive position. Nice 1905 in the wrong position.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like it. Well, this is here. You can see exactly how tall the turret is. The Germans set a charge and blew it off its rail. And down here, you can see the little walkway. And you see all the impacts on top of this. You clearly see this has been hit by a lot of interesting things. Here's one of the nuts for when you put it in place. And here's missing entirely.
It really is amazing to see just exactly how many hits this poor turret actually took. It really is a testament to just how well built it was, because the Germans brought up 145 artillery pieces, howitzers, heavy mortars, 88s for direct fire, just to destroy this one fort. And looking at this steel dome, it pretty much looks like every single one of them at one point was firing on it, and none of them seems to have breached to the interior. So well built they were.
I mean, you got to give it to the German gunner. This was a good hit right at the joint there.
Yeah.
So the Germans had all the artillery on the other side of this hill, shelling over onto this fort.
The design process of this fort is a little interesting because the landscape generally is fairly flat, and where this fort was placed was fairly flat, but in order to give it some sort of overview, they seem to have elevated it up a bit and then supported the fort with a whole lot of gravel, which then, we were told, did not really settle by the time the Germans started raining shells, dislocating it. So instead of building on a natural hill, they created a hill and then put the fort in it.
Like, I can literally stick my arm in here. This is how deep it is. It comes all the way out. And for an armored turret like that, that's a heck of a hit.
And from up here, you can really get a sense of how this fort was artificially elevated onto an artificial plateau, where you can see everything around you, but it also sticks up like a sore thumb. And once the Germans had surrounded the area, they could literally just sit arm's length distance and tear this thing apart and bombing it from every direction because you could practically not miss it. And here next to the tore-up observation dome, which really took a lot of damage as well, it's clear that you have a great vantage point of the area around you, but also the guns seem to be just slightly lower and behind, leaving it without as much of a field of fire, which indeed was a problem here. And the road running behind here, behind the cemetery, you can't even see it from this position where the guns and machine guns are for quite a stretch.
There's nothing like down here in a shell hole where you have, well, you're supposed to come down here as well because I can't hear you. This was all about wind.
We're here in front of one major cloche. The smaller cloche up on the top of the hill was an observation cloche with just light machine guns, the FM. And the first guys who died in here, a shell hit one of the rotule, the balls holding the light machine gun in place, projected it back, hit him on the head and killed him. He was an NCO. More shells hit and the wooden platform fell, killing 2 more men. Now the problem is that was meant to be the observation cupola, the cloche, to look at the whole countryside around. And therefore the commanding officer made the turret behind us lift up into the battery position to be used for observation. And it's then that the German shell hit it and jammed it. And that's when everything started to come unraveled, because later German engineers crept up under the cover of bombardment from shell hole to shell hole and placed explosives on the turret.
So that up there was blown by German engineers?
Yes. This cloche behind me would contain a mixed armament, what they called a trumelage. In other words, it's an anti-tank gun, 25mm shortened barrel, and 2 7.5 MAC machine guns in one mounting. Well, when the observation cloche was destroyed, they lifted the main turret to use as an observation lookout. And a German shell hit it, a good hit, and jammed it. And then later, it was in the evening, the night, German engineers crept up and placed explosives on it, which blew it completely off its mounting and destroyed the guns inside. They fell inside. But the big problem is that the explosions on the turret and also at one of the one of the blocks, the explosions cause fires inside. And it's the fires that destroy the fort, basically. Because they can't fight the fires, they have no sufficient water pressure or extinguishers. And the toxic smoke drives the garrison eventually, wearing gas masks, down into the tunnel connecting the 2 fighting blocks. And there, when the canisters in their gas masks are used up, the guys actually die. And the Germans, when they finally break their way into the Ouvrage, they are horrified when they go down below and have to climb over piles of bodies of the entire garrison who died here.
And they didn't even die fighting, they suffocated.
They suffocated, yes, in the toxic smoke.
This really is a bell, isn't it?
Yes.
How much of this would be, not all of this would be exposed?
Yes.
Would this all be exposed like this?
Just like that.
And you can sort of see where it's been...
But it goes down quite far into the ground.
I mean,
45 tons they had to lift.
45, yeah, you build in a little road and then you bring in for the crane and then you roll the crane in, yeah.
The German artillery created 4 trenches which led onto the roof of Block 2.
Right.
And the German engineering troops came through these trenches on the roof of Block 2. German artillery shot until 2,000 shell on La Ferte and the surrounding during the 4 days.
Right, and all that time, under cover of the shelling, they were digging their trenches.
And you can really see how these got shot up. And here you have a good way of seeing the difference between the World War I and World War II forts, where the addition of significant amounts of rebar really makes a difference. Yeah, shells uncovered this and the rebar, and there you see the difference between World War I and World War II. You have here massive amounts of rebar.
Yeah, yeah. But it's not invulnerable, but it needs a lot of chipping away.
Yes.
You have to keep punching, punching, punching.
There's another couple of meters going in of this.
And for the Germans, this position was so important because this was the flank that would protect the advance over Sedan.
The moment that the French troops withdrew in the face of the major German attack, they withdrew onto a range of hills far beyond the Ouvrage. And then there was fighting in the village, the fortified village of La Ferté, defended by colonial troops, and they held out for 2 days till they finally surrendered. But another major problem occurred because the French ordered a counterattack with Char B-1 bis tanks, the most powerful on the front at the time. But because they didn't want to announce to the Germans that they were coming, they did the counterattack without preparatory artillery bombardment. So the attack failed. One of the tanks fell in the river and the crew were drowned. This complete disaster. And that attack, the counterattack, failed at the very moment when the German engineers were approaching the Ouvrage here. But because the attack was in progress, the French attack, they had ordered the gunners at Les Chenois, the next ouvrage, artillery ouvrage, to cease fire, because they didn't want to fire on their own men during the counterattack.
And in the middle of that, we have flimsy radio communication between the village and the forts, and then there's the two outlying blockhouses that are attached to this fort but not connected, and they couldn't communicate either.
There's no communication, no coordination of the action, which results in the disaster. Yeah.
So this is where everything really started. Everything just went wrong on that one day, and the Germans were already dug in the hill across from the hill here, and well prepared.
Yeah. Well, the only way to dislodge them is by air attack. And of course, as I explained to you, the major air units here, which were to support the Ardennes region, had all been sent into Belgium and Holland. There was no air power here. The only way to beat those 145 cannons firing on this area is to take them out by air attack.
Still,
and they couldn't do it.
The interesting part is still we are only 8 kilometers from the Belgian border here, and they didn't get here until the 15th. So something held them up for 5 days, over 8 kilometers.
What held them up? Well, you see, when they're fighting their way through the forest, you get the fortified blockhouses. They're farmhouses. The bottom level is a bunker with an anti-tank gun. And they control the roads through the forest. And then the troops live in the house part, which is built on top of the bunker. And there was one bunker in particular that held off the Germans for 2 or 3 days, I think, and destroyed several tanks before they actually overcame the resistance.
Not to mention the Germans had created for themselves a bit of a roadblock where on the 2nd and 3rd day of the attacks, some German units were still in Germany, hadn't even crossed the border yet.
Right, that wouldn't have helped much, would it?
With explosive charge.
Right. They blew in the door, the grill.
But this wasn't the door that started the fire.
Yeah.
Started here.
Block 2 was the first block attacked by German in the evening of the 18th of May 1940. And few hours after, the second block, Block 1, was also attacked by German during the night of the 19th of May.
No. Ah, peut-être il se met en 25, non? Non.
The first greeting, automatic rifle.
Au bloc 1, oui.
And here we're starting to see signs of the damage. Speaking of, so I have never seen water containers that small. Usually they're coming from, I've only seen them from a bigger tank.
It's a bathroom for this block for 50 men with cold water.
Of course. Okay. I'm starting to see where things went wrong. There's all the electrical cabling that came off the wall.
And here is the wall, the wall that got blown in. The wall was there, and it got blown in.
This is the part of the wall that used to be attached
There, yeah.
here. But oh, this came down from the blast pressure from the cupola, from here. So this is what this wall was destroyed when this was destroyed.
German threw explosives from the 3 tunnels over there, and the explosive and so grenades fell here and destroyed the ammunition stored in this part of this block.
Yeah.
And next there were explosions and fires.
That takes a big explosion to destroy a wall like that.
I mean, there was probably a door that was closed in there, right? Was there a door in this wall?
Yeah, a big armored door here.
Okay, so if that was closed, you have a smaller room, confined space,
Pressure build-up.
pressure build-up.
Yeah, for the
And this wall was not reinforced into this.
No.
There's no rebar. This was just a wall.
Exactly. It is in case of explosion, but by accident.
Yeah.
Right, and the crushed tubes, that's very impressive, isn't it?
Plus, you also this was to keep overpressure in the fighting department.
Exactly.
So this wasn't a reinforced wall. But there it is. That means everybody in here had a bad day. And you can see here from the observation cupola how this is what's left of the ring of the floor. And you can see how the walls all black and sooted.
The 2 men died in that fire.
Three.
2 men, yeah. Yeah.
Now are the bricks just post-war to?
No, it's
Just
all
board,
left
that was all
exactly
there.
as it was. Yeah.
But this room is really, wow. Yeah, you could just imagine how fire and explosions spread in here. But there wouldn't be anybody sleeping here at that time. Was the people in here? Or did they all went downstairs?
When German attacked, a part of the garrison were still here, but only in the fighting part.
Of course.
this block.
Another wall blown down from the explosive dropped.
Where is this? Where's the shrapnel? Where's the?
Wall come from.
There was no wall here.
Yes.
Where did this?
Oui, oh yeah, but there's a wall here. A wall is here.
Well, there was a wall there.
There's a door, a door there and a wall across.
So what was up here? Up there, staircase.
Une cloche.
Une cloche.
For a tribunal, for a mixed gun.
Ah yeah. Yeah, so they threw explosives in that.
You have explained the attack in front
No, the mixed-
mixed gun.
The big 45 ton.
That's up here.
Firing, yeah.
In the shape of an egg.
Yes.
Can I crawl in there? I promise not to fall, and if I fall, I'll promise not to sue, because it'll be my own fault, and now I said it. That explains it. So that's the bottom of it.
Vous avez le seul exemple de peinture murale, de fresque qu'on trouve ici à la Ferté. C'est le blason du 150.
On that explosion, you can also see how it's askew. It's kind of hard to, I don't know if you can tell. Besides all the mangled metal, you can see the plate, the ring people will stand on for the next floor here. This is the one dome I can't crawl up in, guys. You're gonna have to live with it. Because this has been blown up. Very well and efficient. By 9 engineers.
And there is the symbol, the insignia of the 155th.
You here in the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I.
Régiment d'artillerie de forteresse.
D'infanterie.
Oh, d'infanterie. Oh, oui. Régiment d'infanterie de forteresse.
And this is part of the floor of the dome, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the cupola.
And when this exploded, you ended up with this wall coming down as well. And you can see the new beds as the late model Maginot line with the separators in the beds.
Oh, yeah.
It's the small details, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a bedroom for NCO.
NCOs. Okay.
Ça a plutôt bien résisté au bombardement.
Yeah, look at it's armor plate, the blindage.
Oui, c'est pour éviter, parce que là vous avez regardez.
There you have, look at protection. When it's being bombarded over the beds, to stop fragments of the ceiling falling on them, on the beds, they put plate.
We are higher up in near a fighting position. That's how the Germans did it. Put beams lateral in their bunkers. Still, it took a. So everything up here goes to hell, literally. Well, I think we can use that word fairly safely.
Oh, yeah. And the anti-fragmentation color.
Yeah. And that sets off fires, and then people go down here or down there.
It's a cul-de-sac.
Oh, it's a cul-de-sac. So they didn't flee down here; they fled this way.
Only two rooms.
Two rooms.
One is for supply, and another one is the usine of this block.
power station.
So engineering place.
He was the commander of the last carrier pigeon. Was he?
No.
That wasn't him.
No pigeon here.
No pigeon in here.
No, pas de pigeon.
Si, au bloc 1.
Ils appellent un pigeonnier.
Oui, enfin dans des cages. Hein.
Of course there's a pigeon.
Et si finalement on ne peut pas envoyer un message, on mange le pauvre pigeon. Ah, ça c'est la cloche.
Oh, yes.
Ça c'est la tourelle.
La tourelle, oui. This is the
Yes.
turret.
Yeah, 1905 mixed turret. Now I'm starting to recognize them.
Yeah.
By the long arm, because if it had a short arm, it would be a mortar turret.
So you have seen the same things in Rombach, in Forcasso,
Yes.
but in Forcasso it works.
I know, I drove it.
Yeah, me too.
You know Ludwig?
No, Bernard.
But okay. There's just something more, and I was telling him that when it's destroyed, there's something about destruction that's more interesting than when everything works. There is. There's the arch and the air ventilation. It's interesting how this rounds off, because I've only seen these 30 meters underground, and here this is the outside of the block that's out here above ground, just about.
Yes.
After the destruction of the block, between 6 and 7 o'clock, German came back 1 hour after with all the explosive charges, 40 kilos. And if you remember, the turret gets struck in battery position. So the German put the 40 kilos of explosive on the wall of the turret, and it destroys the turret. And the turret blew up.
Lifted up,
Yeah. And it fell in this part and destroyed. It's a reason why of the current position of this part of the terrain.
I didn't even notice it was crooked. Oh, it is.
Yes, it is. Oh.
Yeah. So the explosion bounced it all the way down here.
Yeah.
Wow. Did not notice that. And that was definitely the end of the turret.
That's good. Do you know what ground it is?
I've seen this, but haven't seen it with this level of destruction.
À Fort Castle, c'est un tribunal aussi?
Oui.
Mais un tribunal moderne.
À Fort Castle, ils ont deux tourelles. Ils ont une tour en 1935 à l'armée française.
And I liked that they left it intact. They didn't try to restore anything. And a very nice detail is the pictures they put up in the rooms of the soldiers who died there. This is the access hatch up to the space between the dome and the wall, where you could crawl up and move debris. But you're not gonna fix a dome that heavy when it's off its alignment, are you? Not the periscope.
That's impressive.
Yes. It is impressive what explosives can do. Speaking of how, even here, the explosion came down and bent metal. Oh, look at that. Oh, bloody hell, this is amazing. Well, there's a lot more room than in the other one. All right. Wow.
When the first mixed gun was destroyed, so, and due to the blast, he fell in the first floor.
So they didn't even hear the engineers come up here.
Non, ils n'ont pas écouté, ils ont voulu silencieusement. Voilà. Ça, c'est un lauréat?
Oui, pour les militaires.
This is amazing. This is an amazing destruction. Here's the gun laying on the floor, all broken. This really is something to see. I think it's good luck that there was not 4 people in here serving the weapons. Wow.
So this is command post to the turret with his it's not connected.
It's the identity card. Going to go in the gallery.
I know.
And you go first.
Wow.
Beautiful armored doors, aren't they?
Where did this happen?
We don't know precisely what happened here. Probably when German tried to enter in the fort, one of the 2 doors of this airlock got stuck, so they probably put an explosive charge.
Yeah.
Well, okay, it is not very clear.
Well, no, that's something you do post-mortem. And we all know how this goes.
28 meters depth.
Not that much fun.
So after the attack of this block, the French probably made some sabotage.
Sabotage, yeah. And then they all, when there was smoke and fire and explosions upstairs, they all fled down the stairs, down these stairs.
fingers on. It's going to be much worse going up.
I'm saving my energy. Come on, we're going to use the tunnel.
Well, the tunnel is never a problem. It's flat. So you had all these 100 men, how many? 110?
How many men?
Yeah. 105. And they were down here in this hallway. In that little room, and the little room at the other end. And this is where they died.
It's very hard to imagine or describe how a hallway with 100 bodies would look, and I will spare you from the photographs that was taken by the Germans. But this must have been a sad last place to end your last stand for obeying orders to hold, with nothing left to fight with, and nowhere to go, and oxygen running out. It indeed was the proverbial submarine going down.
Do you know even that? In 1940, this gallery was full of ammunition boxes and food supplies.
This one here?
Yeah, a tunnel.
Oh, the tunnel too?
Yeah, the whole tunnel.
So they had food and tunnel. They had food and ammunition, but they didn't have air.
Yeah.
Okay. This is different. Okay, so this is...
It is the area for the telephone cables, and over there the well for drinkable water.
Oh. Oh, yes. So they had a well, they had food, they had ammunition, but they didn't have air.
They had no means of ventilating, had no ventilation.
Because they had food and water and ammunition, it's the reason why the High Commandment denied an order for evacuation.
So they asked to be pulled out.
Yeah.
And this is still a small fort that, if surrounded, couldn't be expected to hold out forever, just like the outlying blockhouses.
The two 75 blocks guarding the road, when the interval troops were drawn back, the commanders realized that you couldn't defend those blocks without protection, exterior protection, because someone could come up to the embrasure and just chuck a grenade in, and it's finished.
So they pulled them out?
Pull them out, yeah.
It is not the commandment. It is the officers, the two officers who commanded each block, who decided themselves to withdraw. But the 18th of May, the commandment said to this officer with their crew to go back in the casemate.
It goes back into the casemate.
But the Germans were in the casemate.
The Germans were there already.
After the destruction of the two blocks, all the garrison came here in the gallery to protect them against the fire and the bombardment. The French garrison couldn't reach the two telephone rooms. So here you can see a part of the telephone network, and the responsible for the communication, Adjutant Sailly, took a field phone and connected it with the telephone network. So here it's the last point of communication for the garrison.
Right.
And the last call was sent here in the morning of the 19th of May 1940 by the responsible of the communication, so Adjutant Sailly. And Sailly called Le Chinois, and he spoke about the situation here. He explained that they wore the anti-gas mask for 6 hours, and there is a lot of smoke here and no more light.
No more light.
Yeah, and it is the last call for the last message from La Ferte.
Why didn't he surrender?
Because they didn't receive the order for surrender. But when the commandant of the fort, Lieutenant Bourguignon, asked an order, it's for evacuation, not for surrender.
So he did the ultimate of his duty and he didn't surrender. And he died in place.
So a little in February. Very interesting picture.
You know that I actually think that's very nice. That you put just a single picture of the guy who died in their place. Don't overdo it, this is very appropriate.
And the Germans were horrified. Which had the job of clearing out the bodies.
It was a penal battalion. Wow. They're literally just, yeah, that was right here. And this is what the hallway looked like.
So, it's a picture taken by German on June 1940.
And that is why they evacuated the Chinois and the next Ouvrage. The French High Command did not want the same fate that happened to them. Didn't they?
No, the evacuation of the Chinois and the other forts is due to the German progression in fact.
The majority of the troops.
Yeah, because they also started to rebuild yeah. But after the fall of La Ferte, the Germans in the area lost the most part of their artillery support. So they couldn't attacking the fort. The line the same way.
And this was a coal stove.
For fuel oil. And
Fuel oil.
And
That'll be pumped in from above.
and charcoal probably.
So that would be the coal store here. It's kind of hard to tell what this was. There you see part of the bigger arch.
It's a coal store and stockage of munitions. That's a strange mixture, since coal can circumbust the charbon, se mettre en feu lui-même.
Ouais, c'est.
On mélange les munitions et les charbons.
En fait, c'est pas certain. Comme vous l'expliquez, les munitions qui sont tout stockées dans la galerie.
So that, that's for the fuel oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be pumped in from above. The pipes coming down here. Alright, so they could cook and they could fight and they could drink. They just couldn't breathe. What's down there?
So, it's the second gallery of La Ferte. It's a sewer, but it's also the cul-de-sac.
Oh, it ends right here. Usually one set of stairs brings two sets of stairs, brings three sets of stairs, then four sets of stairs. Well,
Where to live?
yeah, you know, about that. The Germans really needed it.
The bedroom of the commandant of the fort, Lieutenant Bourguignon. So, Bourguignon asked an order for evacuation during the night of the 19th 3 times, and systematically his chiefs denied this order. And it is probably here that a German found the dead body of Bourguignon on June 1940. The most part of the garrison was found in the two galleries, but Bourguignon was found here. And a dozen of corpses were found in the upper part of Block 1.
So he stayed in his post, by his telephone.
And he died with
So, this is what the bedrooms would have looked like before they were blown and exploded in the other block. Now tell me that these are really the original guys' stuff.
Ce sont les équipements originaux ou
Il y a très longtemps, en fait, les lits qui étaient là ont été retirés.
All right. This was used as a museum for a few years.
La galerie, pour faire avancer la dépend des deux blocs. Depuis le haut de l'escalier du bloc 1, depuis le haut de l'escalier du bloc 2, on aspirait. Il va commencer à s'activer. Quand le bloc 1 est situé, les munitions pour les mais toutes les fumées ne pourront pas s'échapper par le vélo. Il faut qu'il y ait une partie des fumées qui vont descendre.
Yeah, I guess that was too much for the ventilators.
Well, there was a manual and electric ventilation. You've got an electric and manual system to bring air in here to ventilate the gallery. And it goes along the gallery and it's sucked out by electrical or manual systems the other end. But with the explosion in that block, there was no evacuation of the air.
And the electricity went out.
Well, they had manual.
The manual.
But it was smashed, it was blown up. So therefore, the ventilation system continued to pull the smoke down into the gallery, and there was nothing to take it out again.
It gets worse.
Yeah.
Two generators here, and two generators in block 2. But one is needed for the electricity production for one block. The second one is here in case of power of breakdown of the first one.
Yep.
There wasn't, is that
There wasn't.
you see?
Oui, il y avait un mont de charge aux deux blocs,
Oui,
mais les Allemands ont utilisé celui du bloc 2 pour sortir les corps.
All right.
C'est par le bloc 2 qu'ils ont sorti les corps. Parce que le bloc 1, en début juin 1940, était encore trop exposé aux Français. Regardez les lignes françaises. Donc les Allemands ont évacué les corps des Français.
What's over there?
So this corridor is an airlock, and in front of this airlock there is a cloche for a mixed gun. And at the bottom of this cloche there is a room. It's a room for ammunition. So
There used to be a room.
So more destruction here.
yes, and when the ammunition explodes, the wall here blew up, but also the two doors.
Yeah, the two doors.
And after the destruction of these two doors, the toxic smokes go through the corridor and next in the gallery, where the garrison was.
If that had been reinforced concrete, it wouldn't have burst, perhaps. From the big blocks.
I mean, if you throw a 40-kilogram charge
I get that.
down that, and even if the door had been closed, it would still have run, depending who. Wow. There used to be a little room in here. There used to be a room.
The bedroom.
Bedroom.
And at the other end, is there another cloche?
Yeah.
There's a cloche over there.
Wait, for mixed gun.
That's been smashed as well, so il y a le trumelage là.
Oui, il est là, on peut pas y le voir.
Wow.
Yes, you wouldn't want to be in this bed, would you?
Wow. Yeah, it's when you do redecorating with explosives.
Yes.
What What happens when your wife tells you she wants a pink bedroom and you blow it up? Let's see how this was hit before it came out. I mean, these are... What the hell happened to this thing? Oh, it got hit right here.
You can see the rotor which maintains the weapon inside the cradle.
Yeah.
And the German put explosive charge here. Yeah.
So this is a charge. This is not even a shell.
No, not a shell. Explosive charge.
Wow. Yeah, that'll do it. They did it.
So it's now very good for flying around corners. 2 recoil cylinders on the top, they're 25.
Yeah, this is like laying on the roof of the cupola in there.
Yeah.
Well, they got a floor of it.
And the 2 MSCs with the camembert. I have a camembert, Johnny.
Ah oui, on en trouve souvent, c'est assez répandu. Faut dire que c'est que pour la France ou
tout le monde.
Just look at this. Look at how. Look at this, Jesus.
Les trains, la Maginot, ils ont dit que c'est sur le même ligne, combattre sur le même ligne. Des seigneurs de guerre.
comment est-ce qu'on voit
Des canonnières qui se battaient.
Actually, look at the floor that broke apart there. This is where. So it's interesting when you see how the floor broke apart in the middle of this dome. It's just. You're supposed to be safe inside your steel domes. You're not supposed to have them dismantle themselves underneath you and have the floor fall down. Yes.
Block 1 was attacked by German between 11 o'clock on midnight, the 18th of May 1940. And when German attacked this block, a part of the garrison was still there. And in this crush, there is 1 wounded.
One guy was wounded in that.
You only were wounded from this. So what did they do? Did they fire at it, or was it a charge? It was a charge.
In the first step, German just put explosive charge on the cradle. When the cradle was destroyed, they threw explosive charges on grenade, which fell inside the fort. And you can see the result here.
Yeah.
German probably used more explosives than Block 2. There are more destruction here and more fire. You can see here.
Yes. But the town they caught fire. You run toxic smoke.
So that would make all of them burn, of course.
Yeah.
So all the electrical cables burning tar that would do it.
Yeah.
That would. So the whole place would just fill up with toxic smoke, suffocating the oxygen, and then the people.
Alors, aussi les Allemands utilisent. Et quand l'atollite explose, elle dégage une quantité énorme de monoxyde de carbone.
There weren't that many Maginot Line forts that were broken into and defeated.
None.
I think
some small ones, interesting ones.
I think there was 5
Yeah, but
in
very
total.
small.
Yeah.
10.
10?
10 forts. The bigger one. The smallest.
All the plans.
All
The German archives, they're in Covents. They have plans
No.
on every fort with the thickness of the wall, where the French had left it thinner to plunge back in. They have them. They're there in the archives. They had them before the war.
Oh, look at this.
Well, all the fort plans are in the archives. I don't know if this was has them or not. They haven't seen them. Even the forts which were never built because some German The Germans preserved it as a trophy, and they brought visitors from several of their allied countries to visit it, to show off what they could do to a Maginot fortress. Not telling the visitors, of course, that this was the smallest and probably the weakest of all the Maginot Ouvrage. If you tried the same tricks on somewhere like Fermont, which they did try, they didn't succeed at all.
Yeah.
They were thrown back.
Oh, this looks a good shape. Grenade launcher. The automatic rifle. Nice. At least this is all in place.
Yeah.
Everything, grenade launcher, automatic rifle. It's a little bit of a tube missing. On that will look pretty good to go. Although it's very black. It's very blackened.
FM 2429.
Yeah, you can see, you're right, you can see how all the wires of the outer coating.
Oh, and this is the Boulogne lance-grenade.
Holy.
Oh, yes.
Shrapnel here.
Non, c'est un assemblage de différentes grenades.
Okay.
C'est un modèle spécial de la Ferté.
Ah. Do you know we're about to launch a grenade?
It's the handle there and everything.
Put the grenade here, and there is a little hole here for the pin. And next you close and you launch. And it goes outside in the ditch outside.
And the Germans said, oh, what's this? It's Garrison.
I always like these. I mean, I get the fact that it is insanely over-engineered, but I love the fact that they took time to do it.
Yes, because in 14-18 in the Ouvrage la Ferte, there's just a wooden box.
Okay.
Which goes down. You roll it down.
I mean,
It's qu'on fait plaisir.
And the Germans pick it up and throw it back.
Yeah. I mean, when you have time and you have money and you have thought, then you build something like this. When you have no time and money, you make a hole in the wall. That is almost over-engineered to the point where you would almost think the Germans did it.
Yes, it's true.
Là, on a un complet, mais dans une pièce à côté, on a juste le tuyau, un bouchon, une chaîne, on retire le bouchon et c'est fini. Voilà.
Yes.
Wow, look at the damage, look at the damage here. You can clearly see from here, they threw something down here that landed, explosive landed here on the floor and sent shrapnel from the bottom up along the wall. So they threw an explosive into one of the broken embrasures that exploded on the bottom. Yeah. And you really don't see that very often. You can see here in the walls, the metal is bent. This was so much more than just a small grenade, because this is probably one of the things that brought the elevator down and sent shrapnel from down and up. And you can see the blast here on the side had bent it inwards completely. That's really something. You see shrapnel coming into this room on the roof. The way the elevator here is down, I see that would have exploded from down. Definitely there was an explosion down here. I just wonder where the elevator was when it went. I think that's impossible to tell at this point. From the point of the explosion, how the wall had just been peppered with shrapnel, and the blast wave pushed this apart, and you come in here to the room, where if you had been a gunner right there, when whatever it was that blew up in that dome, on the floor of the dome, would have killed everybody in this room. And given how everything had crept over the walls. Was it a water tank? The water tank? At least the water tank looked like it wasn't hit at all. So there's shrapnel that traveled from this room and then up towards the machine gunner. That's it.
To be able to,
Yeah, to protect from close fire so nothing should get in there.
yeah. Oops.
These are very neat, very well designed.
Yeah.
And you have a moat right outside here, right?
The,
And then you lock it, of course.
yes.
It's also to keep overpressure inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, the air pressure.
The smaller the holes, the better. Right.
Mais le Mach 24 n'était pas FM 24, n'était pas si bon parce qu'il y a eu un accident. On a chargé des balles allemandes qui sont vraies, mais les balles étaient trop loin. C'est pourquoi on a rétréci la cartouche.
And everything look in place. Is that a 60? No?
C'est a 47.
That's a 47, isn't it? Yeah. See, it's a little smaller. And I love this. Then you could swing it back and you can close the embrasure and replace it with a machine gun. Well, a twin machine gun.
Yeah, you have two jumelage, so you're putting out 750 or 3,000 rounds a minute. 3,000 avec les 4. 750.
And see, this is the magazine slide. That would connect to the tube over there, so the room wouldn't fill with shell casings. And I really love put 47mm shell in here, just to show, and they would all evacuate out to the moat from here, which is really awesome. And what is really, really awesome is the fact that you still have the original periscope. This is the original site, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, this is a remake?
No, it came from a light tank.
Pour immobiliser un canon, le plus simple c'est de enlever
Oui.
la hausse.
Camembert,
Mais
here.
encore, sauf si on peut beau site. Ils ont beau site, ils ont un canon. Oui, tu peux rouler.
Oh.
Yes, ça marche.
It's a mixed gun.
I know.
If you remember, in Block 2 there is a turret. It's a turret for two mixed guns, and one of this mixed gun is now here.
It's a mixed gun with a, what's it, a 37?
25.
25, and then a machine, and the two.
Twin machine gun.
And twin machine gun, yeah.
7.5 millimeters.
Okay, so you had the 25 barrel, and then you had
Here
there and there, yeah.
for the machine guns, and here for the sight.
Okay. It's funny, you were sighted underneath the barrel.
And the soldier, the shooters was sit beneath his weapons, and at his feet there is a pedals as triggers.
And then you have two loaders on the side that would put the camembert in place, and a loader on the back for the gun.
The barrels are on the airplane. Upstairs.
Camembert.
Camembert.
Road magazine with 150 bullets of 7.5 millimeters.
Yeah.
This one.
This is a twin.
Yeah.
So the good thing about having a twin is that you'd have two loaders that would load the magazine. You'd only fire one at a time.
One or both?
No, you wouldn't fire both. You would fire one, and then you would load. While that was cooling down, you'd fire the other one. So you'd always alternate between them, which is really clever because they're air cooled, as opposed to the Maxim.
Said there was a water injection system when you wanted rapid fire.
Really?
Pour les,
Yeah.
on sait que ça existe pour les cloches.
Like with the Bren gun, you pull your barrel out and you plunge it into cold water in that tank.
Yeah, because the barrel couldn't be water cooled here.
Well, there was a water injection system into the chamber for some of these machine guns in the Ouvrage.
But this
one doesn't have
not
it.
one of them, yeah.
No, this one hasn't. But Colonel Trutman, in his book, and he should know because he was an engineering officer, he said there was an arrangement to. Oh yes. Oh yes. Well, that cow, cette vache-là, elle sera bien. In 1942, up to a tiger. It won't take up the time of a tiger, but it'll seriously damage Mark IV. And the day is.
So here you see something that really clearly hit the entrance. And either this door was locked or closed. This is a very serious steel door. And it's blew a hole in it. Blew it off the hinges, opened it up. It's just interesting to think that they blew through this, but they had to get past the automatic rifle. And there are some hits on here, obviously, but it doesn't look like it was detonated or exploded in any way. You see, there's some shrapnel in it. But this gunner would have been taken out by the explosion in the cupola.
Wow!
Celui-là, on peut le rentrer à l'intérieur.
So hinge unloaded here, and this is sort of roughly where it was when somebody placed a charge here, and that completely disrupted the door. This is such a heavy steel door. It's really amazing how this thing just went. There's shrapnel on the wall over here. Well, you'd have to come in here past him to get to that door. So this hole is a post-war test.
Probably.
Yeah. They would test everything on everything.
Well, it's not American because it's the damage is too limited.
This was outside toilet. You're in an elevated position. You have firepower coming from above. You can see everywhere around you, surrounded by barbed wires. Landmines? No landmines. That's a mistake. Huh?
Bills. Oh no, not good. No shit. Because the Germans couldn't see the embrasures. They didn't attack them. En fait, la fossée entre les Allemands et les embrasures. Hein? Oh, I pulled the other side.
It's a former searchlight.
Yeah.
And it can move, c'est comme la distance.
We from the cloche over there.
Ah, okay.
That's for him to observation to see from there.
Yes.
He's right.
That's quite a big, thick piece of armor.
Blockhouse down there is one of the fighting positions with the tunnels. And then outside here you had these two blockhouses. So this is one of the two blockhouses that are supporting the fort. However, it was not connected to the fort by underground hallways or tunnels. So when the Germans came closer and it became obvious that these were not be able to be held, they pulled the men out. And by the time the French command realized the men had been pulled out, they asked for them to return to the blockhouses. However, at that time, they were already occupied by the Germans.
The entire garrison was posthumously awarded the Ordre de l'Armée, and Maginot was made a Chevalier of the Legion of Honor. On the German side, Oberleutnant Alfred Gemmer, who led the assault on Block 2, was awarded the Knight's Cross, and later Unteroffizier Walter Pape was also awarded the Knight's Cross for conquering Panzerwerk 505. Yet, needlessly dead they were. Maginot did indeed go down with his Maginot submarine. In the historic world of war, battles, constructions, forts, technology, there is no shortage of human tragedy and great constructions, great heroics, and lessons to be learned and sights to be seen. I will continue to take you through the history of warfare and showing you the locations where this history was made.
Behind me is Vanna von Braun's first test stand. Down the road is Dietmar's nuclear reactor. Over there is the Maginot Line and all its amazing forts. I'm visiting them all and I'm bringing them to you. So I really appreciate you like, follow, and share what I'm doing, trying to document all these important historical locations. And if you feel like you want to watch more pictures or documents that I use for these, go to lostbattlefields.com. And if you feel like helping me out with my travels, because gasoline and travel and airfare is expensive, my PayPal is there, protectionserviceint.com. You are more than welcome, but you don't have to. I appreciate all your support and all your help, and I love seeing these locations, and I love bringing them to you.